10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. It is Monday, March 20th, and we are here at our county office building in downtown White Plains. I'm joined by Acting Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, Terrance Raynor, and I'm also joined in our studio by our Commissioner of Emergency Services, Richard Wishney. And it falls to me to review for the public and for members of the press the details of the horrific accident that occurred very late on Saturday night, technically early Sunday morning, on the Hutchinson River Parkway. The crash cost the lives of 5 young people, and that is a tragedy no matter what the details are. But there is a need for public information so that people know what we know at the time that we are speaking today. There's certainly going to be a lot more information that will be coming out about the details surrounding the crash and the circumstances in the days to come. What we shared today is those things that we know to be public that we can share, and there will be some questions, no doubt, that we can't answer. If we can give as much information as we can, then we will, and Commissioner Raynor will help us in that as the head of our Department of Public Safety, our county police. The incident occurred, as I said, in the early morning hours of Sunday, March 19th, 12:20 a.m., late Saturday night. The location of the crash was on the northbound Hutchinson River Parkway, directly north of the Mamaroneck Road exit in Scarsdale. It is a road that I'm personally familiar with. Point of fact, I drove over this very site 2 hours before the accident. The basic accident information: a 2021 Nissan Rogue SUV was traveling northbound, apparently at normal highway speed, when the vehicle veered off the parkway, struck a boulder, and then struck a tree. The vehicle then caught fire. At that location of the highway, the speed limit is 55 miles an hour. The vehicle was occupied by 6 young people. 5 of them died as a result of this crash, 3 boys and 2 girls. The deceased have now been identified. Their names have been made public. The next of kin are aware. Anthony Billups, Jr., a young boy, age 17. Malik Smith, a young male, age 16. Zanaya Cross, a female, age 12. Shawnell Cross, a female, age 11. And Andrew Billups, a young boy, age 8. These 5 individuals lost their lives in this accident. There is a survivor, Abraham Billups, age 9. The driver, Malik Smith, did not have a Connecticut nor a New York driver's license or a permit. At age 17, if he did have a driver's permit, he would not be able to drive legally at night, and he would also have to have had an adult in the car with him, according to New York State vehicle and traffic law. He is now residing in Connecticut. His family's residing in Connecticut, although it is reported that they had moved from New York to Connecticut very recently. Abraham Billups, the survivor, was riding in the rear cargo area of the vehicle behind the passenger seats. He was able to escape out of the rear of the vehicle. His medical status is not life-threatening, but at this present time is unknown whether he's been released from the hospital care or if he's still under some hospital observation. The other individuals who perished in the car. In addition to the accident and the blunt force of the accident, there was a fire that was triggered that engulfed the car. It is understood that the family may have just relocated from New York City to Derby, Connecticut. The young people had not yet enrolled in Derby schools. New York City School Safety reached out for the names because they were hearing that these were students of theirs. It appears that Malik Smith was enrolled at a Brooklyn high school. The vehicle was rented by a relative. It remains under investigation how Malik Smith had access to it. The agencies that responded to this scene were the Westchester County Police Department, the Scarsdale Fire Department, the Scarsdale EMS, and the Westchester County's Medical Examiner's Office. We want to extend our thanks to all of those first responders who supported and worked on the scene. We want to thank the dispatchers at County Police and 60 Control, Department of Emergency Services, in getting resources to the scene. This was an horrific accident. It was an horrific accident site. Those who were on the scene and dealt with the incident have available to them peer assistance in order to deal with those things that come out of them performing their professional duties at a moment of great crisis and great loss of life. And we expect to be able to deal with any of those individuals who were involved directly in that accident. We do not believe that speed was a factor in this accident. The 55-mile-an-hour speed limit is an acceptable speed to ride at the maximum. All of us who know the Hutchinson River Parkway know that it is a two-lane highway, very little shoulder space, and it is a road that curves quite a bit. At the location of this particular incident, the highway just north of Mamaroneck Road, as you go northbound, the road curves slightly to the left and goes slightly downhill. As we have had the investigation team reconstruct the accident, the driver did not turn with the roadway, continued in a straight line. We believe hit a boulder and then hit a tree head-on, and the car was engulfed in flames at that point. And the 5 passengers who perished were unable to exit safely from the passenger component, front and back seat of the car. This was a single-car accident. There were no indications of damage on the vehicle that would have indicated there was a second vehicle involved. There were also no corresponding tire marks that would have been made had the vehicle been struck or forced off the roadway by some other vehicle. The evidence on the scene indicates, but subject to final investigation assessment, is that the operator was either distracted or fell asleep. The Hutchinson River Parkway, in that downhill grade and with that bend to the left in the area of the accident, is not an area of the Hutchinson River Parkway that has frequent accidents, but it does require a driver to stay alert and be able to move with the changes in the roadway. There were no tire marks from the vehicle on the roadway or any furrowing in the grass, which would indicate that the vehicle did not use any braking or evasive steering. Toxicology reports are still underway to determine if there was any indication of alcohol or drug involvement. We have no way to know at this stage of the game if any stimulant was involved in the driver's usage. The driver, again, did not have a valid driver's license, did not have a driver's license or a learning permit. And of course, as I've just said before, according to New York state law, you are not to operate a vehicle if you're under the age of 18 at night under any circumstances, and you're not to operate a vehicle in the daytime hours unless there's an adult present in the vehicle. The investigation is trying to determine if the occupants of the vehicle, those that perished, were wearing seatbelts or not. It was not easily found at the moment of investigation because of the fire that consumed inside the vehicle. It makes us difficult to know. We hope when the investigation is complete, we will have some clarity on that. We do not know exactly where the traveling party was coming from. There's been some general discussion, not verified, that they were at some either a mall or a family function in New Jersey and were returning to the home base in Derby, Connecticut. It is an unverified assumption, and once we know that, we will let you know that. Autopsies were done on the driver and the front seat passenger. The cause of death by our medical examiner's office was determined to be blunt force trauma, which would be consistent with an automobile accident with a vehicle hitting a boulder and a tree. The cause of death for the other individuals who passed away were also listed by the coroner as blunt force trauma. The speed limit, as I said, at the accident location was 55 miles an hour. There was an eyewitness to the event who indicated that they did not see any excessive speeding that was happening when this all went on. It is the Westchester County's Police General Investigating Unit that is doing the primary investigation here with the assistance of the Accident Investigation Team. Their work is not yet done. They will continue to try to find out as much of the specifics of the accident as is possible, and that information will be released publicly once that information is available. We don't know answers to certain questions, and of course, part of it is to try to understand what is it that we could do to try to prevent an accident like this in the future. And that will be part of the discussion that comes out of this to determine, was this a preventable accident in any way, shape, or form? We know that operation of a vehicle by those who are less experienced behind the wheel is always a concern. But the driver has lost his life, as has the immediate young people around him. And so we're less concerned at this point about who to blame than to understand exactly what happened. We grieve with the families that are involved. To lose a child at age 17, at age 16, 12, 11, 8, these are individuals who had their whole life ahead of them. There were so many things that have been denied them, and the opportunity to grow up and live a full life. And all of that was what was ended this past Saturday night, Sunday morning on the Hutch. We know that there is no way in our realm to bring them back and to try to make restitution. So we hope to learn about the accident, what we need to know in order to do whatever it is we can do to try to avoid this happening in the future. That is the information that I have available. We know we have a lot of folks here from the working press. We'll take whatever questions you have. If I can answer them, I will. If I can't, then we will try to get the answer to you going forward. And Commissioner Raynor, who is here, and the people that report to him, in case a question comes that is beyond my technical knowledge, then I'll refer to the Commissioner to be able to help us. I just want to once again thank, with both Commissioners, Raynor and Wishney in the room, the brave individuals who really do a tremendous job of first response. They come on a scene like this, and they're trained professionals, but they're human beings. And they see things that none of us ever want to see or hope to see, ever. And the fact that they were able to do their jobs professionally is a tribute to them as individuals, it's a tribute to their training, it's a tribute to the superior management of those departments. And I am personally, and we are all personally, grateful for their professional work. And as I unfortunately had to do 2 months ago, when we had a terrible tragedy at our airport, it falls to the rest of us, if you're a person of faith, to reach out through that faith and pray, and hope that these 5 young people have somehow reached a place of peace and rest. With that, we'll open it up to any questions. If I don't know your name, I'll just point to you and try to get your answers. We're going to go ladies first. Nadia?
So, Mayor, what we understand is that these kids were all related, they're siblings. Can you confirm that? And also, did they all live under one roof? What was the living situation?
We don't actually know the direct relationship. We know that there are at least 2 sets of siblings, and whether they are further related than that, and any other possible combination, we're not sure of that. We think that will roll out, in the next few days. They obviously were close-knit and traveling together, so it was not a random group of people. These were people who were together and in close quarters, and of course, their youth, none of them were above the age of 17, so you can see this as a cluster of young people being together. Do you have a follow-up on it before I go elsewhere? Okay. Yes, sir.
Is this being investigated criminally?
I don't know that we've reached that point of the discussion yet.
The investigation itself, the investigation itself is not criminal in nature. However, as things evolve, if there's something criminal that we discover, the district attorney's office, who's already been notified and on board with us, would then be inserted, and then we would move forward with any kind of criminal charges if they become necessary.
Jurisdiction, would it be Westchester or Connecticut or some kind of combination of both?
Our investigation, any crime that's revealed would probably be satisfied under New York state laws, which means the Westchester County Department of Public Safety would work with the DA to press those charges.
The jurisdiction involved is the jurisdiction where the incident occurred. That would be
Yes.
Westchester County in the state of New York.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Just to further hone in on that, there could be penalties for the rental car situation. I want to see if you're looking into that. and penalties for a guardian that lets a young person drive who's not legally allowed to drive, are those going to be aspects of this investigation?
Well, I think the investigation, as the Commissioner said at this point, is the investigation of the facts that surround that. And as those facts are made available, they'll be made available to a variety of different entities. The District Attorney will have that, and there'll be other agencies that have it. There certainly could be criminal pursuit of some of the actions here. Certainly there could be civil pursuit and civil action that might follow this in one way, shape, or form or another. It's too early to know that, but all of the details and the interrelations will have to be laid out by this investigation to know whether or not there's additional details and facts. We are approximately 36 hours since the incident, and so we would expect to know more in the next 2 to 3 days ahead. Let's go here. Yes, sir.
I just had two questions here. Could you first sort of describe what first responders encountered when they got to the scene, and if any of the victims were able to be saved, or if there was an effort, or if it was sort of too far gone?
Let me ask Terrance if he has any reports from the police that responded. I don't know if Richard Wishney has any responses from his people.
Thank you, C. So the first responder on the scene was one of our police officers. He did try to extinguish the fire himself with his fire extinguisher. However, he wasn't successful. Immediately after that, the Scarsdale Fire Department arrived on the scene, and they were able to suppress the fire. With respect to the surviving child, the rear window had been shattered, it's an SUV, so it has the kind of liftgate window. And he made his way out the window in the back, so the officer did recover him.
And there is a photo circulating on social media, a GoFundMe page that has pictures of presumably the victims posted. Have you been able to authenticate that at all, that those are the photos of the deceased at this point?
We weren't aware of this, so you're telling us that is something we'll look into now and determine what's happening out there. So much happens out in the social media that in our sort of day-to-day real world we don't yet know, but we'll look for that and determine if it's accurate and try to have an answer for you in a day or two. Yes, we'll go back to Nadia, then we'll go here.
The 17-year-old that was in the car that was older, that was not the driver, do you know his license status and if he may have been driving?
Let me just make sure I have this right with my notes. Malik Smith, 16, was the driver, and he was the one that was identified as not having a license. I don't know for sure if Mr. Billups, who was 17 in the car, had a driver's license or not. It was identified that he was not driving, so his possession of a driver's license would not be germane, in terms of the operation of the vehicle, since, Mr. Smith was operating the vehicle. And at any event, even at age 17, he would not have been old enough to qualify as a legal adult to be in the car with an underage driver. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if the Department of Children and Families is involved with the surviving boy?
We're not sure. We'll get additional information on that. If Abraham is now a Connecticut resident, then we would have to interact with his family, which I assume the surviving family in Connecticut, and then his care and what have you would come through the Connecticut system. So that would not be something that our operation would do, but we can find out what the circumstances are. We don't know if he's been released from the hospital yet, and if so, to whom, and how that's all working out. We don't know what the construct of the surviving family is. We'll try to find that out. Our communications team, Catherine Chaffee, Catherine Fortino, and Kieran O'Leary, who is communications head for our DPS, will be looking at those issues. And if you want to follow up with this, as soon as we have that information, we'll be happy to share it. Let me go in the back row. Yes.
Thanks. Just another bit about the 9-year-old. Can you talk about how valuable has his account of what happened as a survivor been? If it's, if he's been able to share anything, and also just what hospital was he taken to, please?
I don't know if we have we have access to it. I don't know if the investigation team has been able to talk to him yet. Are you aware of that?
So he was taken to the Westchester Medical Center for his injuries, and we have not interviewed him independent of anyone else. Oh, sorry. We have not conducted an interview of the 9-year-old other than what transpired on the scene. The first responder did ask some questions as to how many people may be in the vehicle, does he know the people in the vehicle, things like that, benign questions. But we haven't gotten into detail with him.
Is the family of the children, are they cooperating with the investigation?
Move over, sorry. As you can imagine, the family is very distraught over the incident, and we have had some conversations. However, there's a lot of follow-up conversations to be had with the family. So at this point, I can say that they've been cooperative with respect to the questions we've asked. However, there's a lot more to go into this investigation. Should I shift?
Yeah, we'll just go back and forth. It depends on the nature of the question. Yes, sir.
Do you know, I can't remember exactly on that spot on the hutch, do you know if there are guardrails?
I don't believe there are. No, well, on the right-hand side, the guardrails on the right-hand side. There are guardrails in the middle that separate the north and the southbound lanes.
So I guess potentially, depending on what you find, are you looking at potential road safety improvements?
Well, I mean, that is part of what would come out of this to determine if that would have been an important factor in saving the lives. The Hutchinson River Parkway is owned by the state of New York and operated by the state of New York. Our police, our county police the road, and if there are additional safety improvements that are necessary or recommended, then those would be recommended to the state to then to do that. But as my understanding is where the point of the accident was, there are no guardrails on the right-hand side. You know, the Hutch has many of the parkways. These roadways were built in the 1920s. The Bronx River Parkway, which is ours, the county owns and operates that. The Sawmill River Parkway, Cross County Parkway, Taconic State Parkway, all state-owned parkways. They were all built in the 1920s, 1930s. They were engineered for a different type of usage as compared to the interstate highway system, I-287, I-684, and so forth. They're much more narrow. They wind in a more difficult fashion. And so we'll have to look at the nature of that particular area. It's my general observation that that area has not been one that has been particularly problematic compared to other areas that we might have where the roadway bends much more sharply or is a blind turn and so forth. But we'll look at all of those things. And if that is an outgrowth of the recommendation, then we will recommend that the state invest in doing those things. Please, want to go ahead? Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, young lady in the back.
Regarding the surviving child, can you detail his, like, you said he was talking to the officer that responded, but do you know if he had like cuts and bruises or burns on his body?
We understand he had lacerations. They were not life-threatening. So they would have been the types of injuries that you would get in a collision setting, but not life-threatening. So, you know, you might have, for the sake of this discussion, cuts and bumps on your arm, but nothing to a vital organ that could cost you your life. That's we understand his physical situation. But from there, he went into the medical center for a full medical review, and the outgrowth of that is not yet apparent to us. As far as what he said that night, that is not yet part of the discussion. And of course, and I think what the commissioner said, and again, you can appreciate this is an extremely traumatic moment. And the recuperation of the young boy is the immediate challenge to make sure that he, at a very young age, he's just seen 5 members of his family die. This has got to be an impossible situation for him as a young boy. So the kind of questions that you or I would want to ask him to know these things probably isn't appropriate until things have been stabilized. And just as we look at our employees as needing, you know, some access to counseling and other services, you would have to assume he is going to need, you know, a great degree of support to handle the emotion of what's happened. I don't know that any of us could, and to have it happen when you're an 8-year-old, 9-year-old boy is inconceivable. So I think we have a ways to go until we have the kind of discussion that might lead to information to help us understand what happened. Yes, I'm sorry.
Can you tell us any sort of communication made between Westchester authorities and family in Derby, if any?
Who made the outreach with the family?
Okay, so initially contact was made at the scene. The Good Samaritan put the child, the 9-year-old survivor, in a vehicle and called the mom. My understanding is it was the mother of the child that was called, and that was the initial engagement with the family. So thereafter, I'm not sure at this point who we've spoken with, and that'll be part, of course, of the ongoing investigation as to what was said to the parents and to the others at the scene.
Right, just with the Good Samaritan, could we just get a few more details? Was that person involved at all in the initial response?
Well, what happened was the person we interviewed saw the vehicle veer off the roadway and crash, and so that the driver of that vehicle did stop and did engage the child at the scene, and that's what we have thus far on that. But that individual was interviewed, and that's what supported the theory that that helped support the theory that it was a one-car crash. There was no second vehicle involved, and number two, that the individual driver just drove directly off the roadway and didn't go with the curve in the road.
The extent of that Good Samaritan's actions basically were pulling over, getting to the car, and putting the 9-year-old inside their car?
Yes.
You said you're looking at whether distraction played a role. Did you recover like a phone from the car? Like were they able to recover things like that, or?
No, based on the evidence, the theory is it was either distraction or the operator fell asleep. So that's based on the theory, not necessarily on any evidence found at the scene.
I'll just take two more questions if there are. Obviously, there's a depth of information that we don't have yet, and I'm sure that's most of the kind of second and third rung questions that would help you fill out a more detailed story is not yet available to us, but hopefully would be shortly. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Just about that, you had mentioned they may have been at a mall or a family event in New Jersey or New York. Can we get any more? Do we have any more information about that?
We are trying to piece it together right now as to where the point of origination was. But at this stage of the game, in fairness, the point of origination is less important than where they were heading to, and they were heading to Connecticut coming up the Hutch. That's a logical direction. They weren't off course. They weren't, driving with no apparent reason to be on that highway. And so whether they were in New Jersey or if we found out later that the facts said they were in the Bronx instead of New Jersey, the point of origination isn't critical. We are looking to the toxicology report to make sure that there was no substance in the driver's system. And then that might lead us back to the incident to determine that the point of origination had a bearing on why the driver was unable to, successfully, get through this issue.
But it is possible that the car had been driven at least 10 miles or something before the point of impact.
Well, I mean, the presumption is that since they did not originate their ride in Westchester County, that they began outside of Westchester, be it New Jersey or some other place. At that point of the Hutchinson River Parkway, you're about 10 miles deep from the Bronx border. If you were coming from some other location, you might have come up, kind of crossed the cross-county expressway to get on the Hutch to go north up into Connecticut. And if you're heading to Derby, Connecticut, the Hutch/Merritt Parkway is the primary route to do that in, as opposed to the New England Thruway, which is a larger road, engineered as an interstate highway, but further south of where your destination would be. So these things will come out and will determine. The important thing is to know whether or not these facts help us understand exactly what happened. There will be facts that will be, perhaps interesting to know, but the real question is how is it germane to, what happened to them, and if there's something else to be learned. Yes, sir.
Were any of the other 5 victims conscious when the officer arrived, or was it just the 6th survivor that was?
I think the understanding that we have is that the other passengers were not conscious. I'm not sure if they were already at that point expired. Perhaps the responding officer would have a better idea. But my understanding is, as the commissioner said, when the first responder arrived, the car was in flames. And so the most immediate situation was to put the flames out. There would be no hope of survival if you couldn't deal with a fire that was engulfing the passenger compartment. And you can just imagine something like this, it's a matter of seconds like this, that, something happens or doesn't happen. So, whether they survived the immediate impact and then the flames immediately were there, clearly it took a certain amount of time for the responders to get there. They responded quickly, but, a minute might be too long a time to be able to rescue rather than switch to recovery. So, again, all of these things we hope will be clarified. We did this press conference today because this happened over the weekend. The next of kin had not yet been informed, so we couldn't give out the names. Those came out earlier today. And so we're in a position to give as much as we have right now. But these are all legitimate questions. There's no attempt to try to dodge them. It's that this is information that will have to come out a little bit further as the investigation matures. And hopefully, whatever other, the testimony of young Abraham Billups will be helpful to understand this, and then some other family members who might have been at the other event or waiting for them at the other end, they may all have little pieces of the puzzle part that will help us understand it better. So I'm going to thank you for your time and willingness to be here in person. We will try to make additional information available as we have it. And we'll turn to the professionals of the Department of Public Safety. And then the questions that go into what other investigations or actions may come out of that will come once we have this report at whatever point in time that's available. And I assume that we'll share that. If not in a press conference format, we'll send you material directly. We'll be available to comment. We'll make available relevant individuals within the county government to do that. And then, certainly the family and others will have their own level of accessibility. But our Director of Communications, Catherine Chaffee, is available to you directly. Kieran O'Leary, the Public Safety Department's Communications Director, is available directly, and you can communicate with them to stay on top of, what other information we have. It's a terrible moment, and there really aren't any words. I appreciate the fact that you're here to try to get where we are today on it. We'll try to be as open as we can. But I think at this point it's more of a human response to the loss of 5 young lives that haven't even really begun to live. And that is a terrific tragedy that no one can explain and no one can justify. We just have to figure out how we go on. Thank you all for coming, and we'll stay in touch with you. For those watching, I'm George Latimer, County Executive. A little later on, we will have an update on some other issues. Ken Jenkins, the Deputy County Executive, will handle that for us on some issues non-related to this. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.